What's up, ladies and gentlemen? And we're taking a look at the Destro lock, and this is probably my least favorite of the lock specs. Affliction's doing really well, Demonology's doing really well, and how fun they are, but Destro, it's really on the weak side for what abilities you've got in general core rotation. Now, you do have some wax and wane of where you can end up playing this, but let's find out looking at the abilities right now. So here we are taking a look at the abilities. We still have Banish, which is going to be a CC for demons, aberrations, and elementals. It allows them to prevent any action for 30 seconds, and recasting it will still end up canceling the effect. No changes from live on this. Channel Demon Fire, this is actually talent, we'll go over that later. Chaos Bolt, still here, still your main damaging ability. As you can see, we can generate soul shards now instead of doing the average everyday just building up our embers. A little bit on the different side. So we'll go over how soul shard generation works here in a few minutes. But right now, this is going to cost 2 soul shards, and it does a really good amount of damage. Chaos Bolt always critically strikes, and your critical strike chance increases its damage. So no real major changes out of Chaos Bolt. Spec-wise, there's not a whole hell of a lot of difference when it comes to general rotations. Command Demon still here. Obviously, the Imp's going to be your choice, and we'll go over why. Right here under Firebolt, damage increased by 50% if you have immolated the target. So, your Imp's going to do improved damage. This is the only pet that's going to benefit you, unless you decide to go with the talent to take on your Doomguard or Infernal. But Command Demon is going to allow each individual pet to actually do something special. Imp is Cauterized Master, which actually does a decent little heal to you. Conflagrate's still here. This is going to be one of your main soul shard generators. It's going to target an explosion on the target, or trigger an explosion on the target, dealing an X amount of fire damage, reduces the cast time of Incinerate or Chaos Bolt by 30% for 5 seconds. That last part in there is actually due to a talent, though. We'll go over that at a different time, but as you can see, it's at a 10.4 second recharge. You get 2 charges of this, and really what you're looking at doing with this is just generating soul shards, and they do have a lot of different gameplay situations with this ability through your talents, so it'll adjust how you play this quite a bit. Create Hellstone does exactly that. Creates a Hellstone that'll end up restoring your health. Create Soul Well. This is going to make your big party deal where anyone can click it and get a Hellstone real quick. Helps out. Dark Pact is a talent. Demonic Gateway is still here. Basically, you're going to be able to set up your gateway like normal, and it's going to allow you to transport through it. But unfortunately, you can only transfer every 1.5 minutes. Dimensional Rift, your artifact ability. Now, I'm going to move out of the way a little bit so you can kind of see this. Hopefully, they don't pop out too far. But it rips a hole in time and space, opening a portal that damages your target. There are currently 3 that I've noticed that'll end up coming out. One's going to do a Shadow Bolt, one does like a Demon Fire deal, and another one casts Chaos Bolt. Now we're going to go ahead and fire these off. Okay, so the purple one's going to be your Shadow Bolt one. It's going to basically come out and just do Shadow Bolts. Then you've got another Shadow Bolt one, unfortunately. We'll see if we can... all 3 of them came out as Shadow Bolt. But generally what you'll end up seeing is one will end up being green, and another one will be like a greenish purple. The greenish purple is going to do Demon Fire by far. That seems like the better one. And then the green one is going to do just a Chaos Bolt. Really interesting gameplay out of this thing. It is a fire and forget, but you get 3 charges with it. Each charge has a 45-second recharge. So you're really looking at timing this just right in certain phases. I'm gonna say like lust phases, stuff like that, but it's going to come out and it's going to just act like an additional pet almost, but in the form of a portal. Let's see if we can get there's a green one, and it just does 1 Chaos Bolt and it'll end up disappearing. I'll keep trying to end up getting additional ones here as we go. Drain Life is still here. Now Drain Life is a pretty decent utility for this spec, although it's not on the actual priority of damage whatsoever. It's going to do very little damage over 5.2 seconds, but the healing you get, you will actually heal for 600% of the damage. Not too shabby. I mean, really, it's not that bad. So if you end up looking at actually needing some additional health or anything like that, this is going to help out, as you will be doing damage. And as you can see, 36,000 a tick, 18,000 normally. That's really a solid amount of healing if you get into a bind. Enslaved Demon still here. Enslaves the target demon up to level 103, forcing it to do your bidding for 5 minutes. Eye of Kilrog. Eye of Kilrog just basically summons the little eye still, so you can end up transporting around, and for some reason it failed. Odd. Good old beta. There it is. And there you have it. That's all it's going to do, and you can transfer around and see where different things are at. Not a lot of use in most situations unless you're trying to figure out new content areas. Fear works the same. Strikes fear in the enemies, disorienting for 20 seconds. Damage may cancel the effect and limit 1. Grimoire Service, this is actually talents. Havoc has had a huge change. So basically, instead of you just getting X amount of spell casts off, or your next 3 immolates or Chaos Bolt, whatever, that I believe that's what it is on live still, marks the target with Havoc for 8 seconds, causing your single target spells to also strike the Havoc victim, limit 1. Basically, what this is going to allow you to do is non-stop cast for 8 seconds, and over that duration, they're going to split the, or not split the damage, but it's going to hit the 2 targets. So you're gonna, just toss it up, and then you'll be able to incinerate. You can immolate, and it'll spread, and then conflagurate, and then throw off a Chaos Bolt, which I was already out of time. Normally, you'd want to end up using it on Chaos Bolt whenever you've got it built up, because that's going to be where most of your damage lies. But that's a lot of different damage pieces that you can really work with. So with that, let's move on. Health Funnel, you still have this. This is going to sacrifice 24% of your maximum health to heal your summoned demon for twice as much over 5.2 seconds. So if you need to save your... will you stop it, you stupid demon? If you end up doing a lot of health, like for some reason your demon looks like it's going to die and you don't want to res it, because now bringing your demons back costs a soul shard. So if you want to end up keeping it from dying, you can health funnel and still give it some health back. Immolate, little bit of a change, works the same way though. Burns the enemy, causing a minimal amount of fire damage immediately, and then additional amount of damage over 15 seconds. Now the main thing about this spec, you're going to want to end up keeping this up, and the reason why is 15% chance to generate 1 soul shard. Chance doubled on critical strikes. That not only ends up playing off the initial cast, there was a crit, alright, you'll end up seeing if it ends up ticking on the dot, if it crits, yeah, see, very limited. Whole thing ran through, guys, didn't get a single one. Crit is going to be very important, because as you can see on these base ticks, 15% doesn't mean much. There was a crit and we automatically got one. So that's what you're looking at with Immolate. And the more targets that you have immolated, the better you're going to produce these. And then your other way of actually securing a more synchronized amount of soul shards is going to be through Conflagurate. Crit still seems like a very solid choice though, for multiple reasons on this spec. And with that, we'll go on to Incinerate. Draws fire towards the enemy, dealing 20,408 damage. Very basic amount of damage. Doesn't do a whole hell of a lot. It's just a base filler spell. And honestly, I didn't find myself using Incinerate all that often. Life Tap works the same as with every spec. Restores 30% of your maximum mana at the cost of 10% of your maximum health. Rain of Fire costs 3 soul shards. But you can now cast it and completely forget about it. Well, it's basically the same as what it is on live too, except it costs soul shards. It does do a good amount of AoE damage, and it's very useful on 3 or 4 plus targets. Ritual of Summoning, channel, 2-minute cooldown. This is just going to be your general summoning stone that we're all used to. Soul Stone, your battle res is still here, guys. You still have a chance of using it. You're going to basically use this. You can either premeditate and put it on somebody beforehand if you know that they're going to eventually die, or you can end up casting it after they die and resurrect them with 60% health and 20% mana. Summon Demon. Again, this is just going to be your general. You can see they cost 1 soul shard. And you still have your 4 basic demons. You can still upgrade these guys with glyphs, but glyphs have changed. You have to actually end up buying the glyphs now and applying it to the spell itself. Really a weird difference. No more deal, but with this spec, you're going to be running with the imp anyways. Summon Doomguard. 3-minute cooldown, costs 1 soul shard. Summons a Doomguard for 25 seconds to assault the target with its Doom bolts. Generally, this is just going to be your main base single target DPS cooldown. That's all there is to it. It's just a single target DPS cooldown. Now, Summon Infernal. Same thing, but AoE. Unending Breath. A little bit of a change on this. Works the same, allows you to breathe underwater, but it also increases your swim speed by 20% for 10 minutes. A little bit of an extra perk with this spell, so it might actually get some use. Unending Resolve, still a very good 1.5 minute defensive cooldown, but it's going to reduce all damage you take by 40% and granting immunity to interrupts and silence effects for 8 seconds. Your Mastery. This is a different Mastery. This is very odd because basically it's a damage reduction. Alright, it's going to reduce the damage that you end up take by a random amount up to 15% currently at where I'm at. But it's also going to increase the spell damage by a random additional amount by 72%. By random, this thing is all over the damn place. I mean, it'll go up to that 72%, or it'll do 50%, or it'll do 10%. It's just really weird on where this lies. So you don't know what spell is going to actually get that boost. There is no way of telling. It's just a constant mismatch of where it's going to be. So the main thing you really want to focus on with this spec when you're damaging is the ABCs. Always be casting, because you don't know what's going to get this damage modifier. Just hit what's in your normal rotation. If you need to recast Immolate, recast Immolate. If you get lucky with it and it does additional damage, good for you. Conflagurate if you're needing the soul shards, or if you've got it to where it's playing a different gameplay style, use it when it's needed. Incinerate when it's needed. Chaos Bolt when it's needed. Just basically play your rotation, and this thing's going to just randomly give each spell an additional amount of damage. There's no way of telling currently on how this is mastered, but it's just completely random. But I guess it does end up helping, but it still feels very weird. You're just not even weird. It's just you're running your same basic rotation. There's no gameplay choice. It's just an automatic, okay, this is going to increase your damage. Maybe increase your damage. Now with that over, we'll go on to Soul Leech. Passive, all single target damage done by you and your minions grants you and your pet shadowy shields that absorb 10% of the damage dealt up to 20% of maximum health. Normally it would be 10%, or it's either 10 or 15% normally, but I do have a talent that has it upgraded to 20%. Now with this, guys, let's go ahead and move on to the talents. So here we are taking a look at the talents, and as you can see, this is what I would have been normally running with, and I'll explain why as we end up going. But right now, Backdraft, passive, casting Conflagurate reduces the cast time of Incinerate and Chaos Bolt by 30% for 5 seconds. There's a couple reasons why I took this. One, the mastery and the way it works, it's randomized for that extra damage depending on your spells. So the more spells that you're able to get out in a short amount of time, the better off you're going to be. And if you can get more Chaos Bolts out, then you're going to end up having that chance of being on Chaos Bolt itself. That was just the theory that was going through my head, and it just seemed to work out pretty good on lining it up, casting it every now and then, keeping a general soul shard generation going on along with whatever was coming with Immolate. I was getting some back with Chaos or Conflagurate and being able to cast my Chaos Bolts. It just felt a little better this way. Then we're looking at Roaring Blaze. Passive Conflagurate deals your remaining Immolate damage on the target by, or increases your remaining Immolate damage on the target by 60% until Immolate expires or is refreshed. This was odd. And again, this is going to be based on timing or luck, but if you need an additional amount of dot damage, if you need an additional amount of dot damage, this is the way to end up going. but it didn't feel right. It really didn't. I mean, you'd end up clicking it. Immolate only lasts a total of 15 seconds anyways. So, I mean, you'll be able to play this into a different gameplay if you want Immolate's damage to be a little bit higher. But unless you've got the main thing about Immolate that you're looking at is the crit. You want the crit to build the soul shards so you aren't reliant on this thing being your top damage. And with that, Shadow Burn, 1 soul shard, blast the target for a high, not really high, a decent amount of shadow damage, generates 2, wow, I cannot talk, generates 2 soul shards if the target dies within 5 seconds. Same thing as what we see on live, costs a soul shard but can generate 2 if it dies. Really, well, I think it actually just refunds it if you, yeah. But anyways, if you're killing a lot of ads or you're just questing or something, this will probably be the way to go to keep your maximum damage up through soul shard generation. Level 30, Reverse Entropy. Passive. Reduces the cast time of Chaos Bolt and Rain of Fire by 0.5 seconds, and they restore 35% of your maximum mana. Basically, this makes it to where you no longer have to life tap whenever you're going through your general rotation. Cataclysm still here. Yeah, I mean, it does a decent amount of damage. It still puts out Immolate. In mass AoE situations, this is going to be the way to go because of the soul shard generation through Immolate, and then it's just a lot of damage. 1 minute cooldown on that guy still. Mana Tap, instant, consumes 30% of your current mana to grant 10% increased damage for 20 seconds. This is alright for a general boost if you wanted to run the Mana Tap. You'd hit Mana Tap, Life Tap, and then go into your rotation. So, generally, if you wanted something extra to manage, this would be the ability you would want. 45, Demon Skin. Your Soul Leech Absorption now passively recharges at a rate of 1%, maximum health every 1 second. And you may now absorb up to 20% of maximum health. This is just an awesome defensive through and through. I've taken this on every spec just for the simple fact it is pretty damn awesome. Mortal Coil still here, 45-second cooldown, and this is going to heal you for 11% of your maximum health, and also incapacitates the target for 3 seconds. Having trouble talking today. Shadow Fury, still a pretty solid stun, and unfortunately they've got your stun CC mixed in with such a strong, powerful piece. I mean, great generation of shielding right here, survivability, and then they go and put Shadow Fury in here. But anyways, 30-second cooldown, stuns all enemies within 8 yards for 4 seconds. Disappointed. Completely disappointed having to choose between those two. Level 60, Eradication. This changes the gameplay slightly to where you're doing a decent amount of additional damage. I enjoyed this ability quite a bit, even though it is a passive. And basically what it's going to do is make it to where you're timing your Chaos Bolts out instead of just spamming them all at once in a short window. Eradication, it's passive. Chaos Bolt increases the damage you deal to the target by 12% for 6 seconds. If things line up right, you can keep this up for a good amount of time, getting that additional 12%. Plays very nicely as long as you have the soul shard generation to keep this wax and wane up and keeping Eradication up on the target. Enjoyable, changes the gameplay completely, and it feels pretty solid. Fire and Brimstone, passive. Incinerate now hits all enemies near your target. Unfortunately, the way this plays, and I'll go ahead and show you the Eradication buff here real quick. You can see it pops up, and then you've got this short little timer. Now, we'll go ahead and Fire and Brimstone. This thing doesn't hit very hard to begin with. As you can see, the damage is fairly low, but in a larger AoE situation, you'll still be able to use this on Incinerate and Incinerate only. No more using it on Shadow or Chaos Bolt. No more using it on Immolate to pass anything. If you want Immolate on everything, you gotta go Cataclysm. And it's disappointing. I mean, that was the thing about Destruction that made it fun, was all the AoE and the chance of doing that insane AoE, and now it's gone. But you still have some choices to end up swapping out depending on the fights. Even though with the new talent system that's almost impossible, but hey, that's something we gotta live with. Soul Harvest, instant, 2-minute cooldown, increases your damage and your pet's damage by 20%, lasts 10 seconds, increased by 2 seconds for each target afflicted by your immolate, up to a maximum of 30 seconds. Again, this here seems like it's going to tie well with Cataclysm, just because if a heavy AoE situation, or it's a burst AoE situation, I should say, and not a long period AoE, this would probably be better, but short window, let's say a bunch of ads come out and you gotta kill them quick, cast Cataclysm, it's gonna do a shit ton of damage, put immolate on everything, you pop Soul Harvest, and then boom, next thing you know, you're gonna be doing an insane amount of extra damage for 30 seconds, you know, an additional 20% for up to 30 seconds if you've got that many. Really interesting setup. I mean, you have to hit at least 10 targets for this thing to cap out, so it's going to be super situational. 75, Demonic Circle. Yes, this is a talent, but it's going to allow you to summon your Demonic Circle just on live, work the same way, and unfortunately it is stuck as a talent. Burning Rush is also still a talent, increases your movement speed by 50%, but also damages you for 4% of your maximum health for every 1 second. Movement and parrying effects may not reduce you below 100% of normal movement speed, lasts until cancelled. Dark Pact, instant, 1-minute cooldown, sacrifices 20% of your demon's current health to shield you for 400% of the sacrificed health over 20 seconds. If you have no demon, your health is sacrificed instead, usable while suffering from mind control effects. Grimoire of Supremacy, you are able to maintain control over even greater demons indefinitely, allowing you to summon a Doomguard or Infernal as a permanent pet. Yeah, again, I don't care for this spell too much. It may work out better for Destro than any of the other 2 specs, but currently I don't see this being a huge deal. Just because I like having the control of the cooldown. That's just my personal opinion. Grimoire of Service passive summons a second demon which fights for you. Now this is awesome. It comes in for 25 seconds and deals 100% increased damage, 1.5 minute cooldown. The demon will immediately use one of its special abilities when summoned. Whenever you summon your Grimoire Imp, which would be the one that you would normally end up taking, you're going to summon your Grimoire Imp. And this thing is going to come out and it's going to attack, and it's going to do 100% increased damage. Now, if you're using your Imp and you have Immolate on the target, it's also going to get the modifier for that, getting that additional 50% off of its Firebolt. Just something to think about whenever you go to use it. Pretty solid cooldown choice, and for being on a 1.5 minute, it's decent, but it does cost 1 soul shard. Grimoire of Sacrifice. Oh god, what did they do to this thing? Instant, 30-second cooldown. Sacrifice your demon to gain demonic power, causing your spells to sometimes also deal 10,102 shadow damage to the target and other enemies within 8 yards. Lasts 1 hour or until... this is... I don't care for the way that they changed this. A lot of people are like, oh, okay, this is going to basically be a splash damage situation. And it works along the lines of, if you've seen any of the mage stuff, they have that unstable magic ability to where it every now and then procs and does damage, and then also does splash damage everything around. That's what they turned Grimoire Sacrifice into. It's that single target chance burst, and it's really not that great. It's unfortunate how bad this thing it really is in comparison, and it's going to really depend on the cooldowns. How people want to do. Longer fights, this may actually be better. Shorter fights, or, you know, burst areas, better timing, Grimoire Service is going to top dog. But unfortunately, this is still here, and like I said, it's kind of like the Mage's Unstable Magic, the way that it works, where it just periodically just bursts, and you end up getting random damage that you never even notice, unfortunately. And with that, we'll go on to level 100. Wreak Havoc. The Kings of Cleave. That's basically what this is. Havoc now lasts 20 seconds and has no cooldown. So basically, you can keep Havoc up 100% of the time and constantly do a 2-man damage rotation at all periods. This is going to be great for, like, council fights, stuff like that, to where you're just tossing this up on your first kill, second kill priority, and go from there. Really nice to end up seeing this. Huge amount of potential in this ability, but is it the strongest for single target? Obviously not, because this is a cleave ability. Channel Demon Fire, on the other hand, is insane single target. AoE, because it splits damage, not so much. But let's go ahead and read this off. It launches 15 bolts of Fellfire over 2.6 seconds at random targets afflicted by your immolate within 40 yards. Each bolt deals 4,413 fire damage. Now, 15 bolts on one target, this is great. This is absolutely awesome on how much damage we are looking at single target. But when you split this amongst other people, it's not so much. You're basically looking at the same amount of damage, just split, and it's not that great in an AoE situation, but it's still worth firing off because it does do the exact same amount of damage. It's just not concentrated focus fire. Enjoyable ability. It looks cool as shit. I'll go ahead and let me show you real quick. And we'll toss up Immolate. And this is it. I mean, it really is a cool animation with it, and it plays out nice. Soul Conduit. Every soul shard you spend has a 20% chance to be refunded. This is also a pretty cool passive, but with the limited amount of buttons already, we're looking at, Channel Demon Fire is a nice ability to end up adding in there, and it also does have a chance to proc from your mastery, from what I've noticed, to get increased damage numbers off of each shot, and each one has a chance of going up to 72%, which, why wouldn't you take it? Because it's fun, and it's also a pretty cool ability, and you'll see, just watch the numbers real quick, you'll see how it fluctuates. I mean, it's just all over the place with how much it actually does in damage. So, with that, that's going to be it for the talents. Let's go ahead and move on to the artifact. So here we are taking a look at the Scepter of Sargeras. Pretty decent looking staff. Enjoyable. It fits the Warlock theme quite a bit. And it is the Staff of Portals. It's pretty interesting. Got some decent skin designs. That one's real nice looking. Then you got the Hubri of the Dark Titan. And we'll go ahead and let this spin around so you can see it. Hubri of the Dark Titan? I don't know. So you can see it kind of gets wings and they start flapping. Really cool looking model here. And it'll do it with each one as they end up progressively going. Real nice. Enjoyable staff. Really cool effects. And then we got Echo of Gul'dan. This is basically going to be a mimic of Gul'dan's stuff. Some decent skins there. And then Shadow of the Destroyer. You're looking at PvP. It's an interesting model. It's got some animation to it also. You'll see it's kind of got like the Kerrigan style Zerg wings going on here. Let this thing spin around and you can see the front of it. Different color schemes. Let it spin, let it spin, let it spin. And here we are. And that's what you got to look forward to. PvP wise. Alright guys, with that let's move on to the traits. Alright, so here we are and we're taking a look at the artifact. Dimensional Rift, your new ability. And this thing's pretty interesting to end up seeing, but it's more there for graphics, unfortunately. It does a solid amount of damage, but this spec is really based around RNG flavor. Really odd. But it's going to rip a hole in time and space, opening a portal that damages your target. 45-second recharge. You can have up to 3 charges of this, and each one's going to take 45 seconds to recharge. But there's also 3 different styles that you can end up doing between each portal rift. With that, once you end up having this thing, the very first thing you get is Flames of the Pit. Increases fire damage you deal by 4%. Pretty decent. The only bad part about this is you've got Immolate, Conflagurate, Incinerate, but it does not end up affecting Chaos Bolt, because Chaos Bolt is going to do chaos damage instead. But your other general abilities are going to get a little bit of a boost. So let's move on. Alright, we're going to go to Devourer of Life. Rank 03. Drain Life has a 15% chance to increase its damage and healing by 25% for 15 seconds. Basically, if you need an additional amount of healing, this is going to work out fine. Planeswalker 0/1. Transporting through your demonic gateway heals you for 50% of your maximum health. Again, a little bit more survivability. Master of Disaster. Increases your damage dealt by Incinerate by 5, 10, or 15%. Okay, Incinerate's going to start hitting a little harder. Makes Fire and Brimstone look a little better. At least in an AoE situation. Demonic Durability. Reduces the cooldown of Unending Resolve by 30 seconds. Little more CC. Basically, instead of it being a 1.5 minute cooldown, it will be a 1 minute cooldown. Fire and the Flames, rank 0/3, reduces cast time of Incinerate by 5, 10, or 15%. Again, they're playing a lot into the Incinerate buff. Not so much anything else. Chaotic Instability, passive, increases critical strike damage dealt by Chaos Bolt by 3, 6, or 10%. This is going to be decent, but the problem with this is it's just it's the critical damage, so you're not looking at as much as if it were base damage, because it always crits anyways. So this is it's a good buff, but it's not going to be as much as what most people think. Dimension Ripper, rank 0/1. Incinerate has a 6% chance to grant a charge of Dimensional Rift. This is going to play out very nice, because if you're in the mood, or not in the mood, but in the area to where you're casting Incinerate a lot more often, which normally doesn't happen that often, getting these extra dimensional rifts will end up helping out quite a bit. Soul Snatcher 0/3. Chaos Bolt has a 5, 10, or 15% chance to refund 1 soul shard. That's going to be pretty nice. Seeing a little bit of refund on top of it, on top of the damage that Chaos Bolt does already, this is going to play out very decently. Fire from the Sky. No, Fire from the Sky. Rank 0/3. Increases damage dealt by a rain of fire by 5, 10, or 15%. Impish Incineration. Rank 0/1. Increases damage dealt by your Imp's Firebolt by 18%. Grimoire of Supremacy. Increases damage dealt by your Doomguard's Doombolt by 18%. Grimoire of Sacrifice. Demonic power damage increased by 50%. This is going to be a neat little increase for that tier, but unfortunately, what is it, level 90 tier, but still, again, I mean, if you're using Supremacy for the Doomguard, that's a loss in your actual burst area. Longer fights, it may end up taking over, but increased damage to the Imp, that's pretty nice, though, because you're looking at 18% increased damage, plus the 50% if you keep Immolate up, doing some solid increased damage out of your pet. Eternal Struggle. After casting Life Tap, you take 10% less damage for 6 seconds. That's going to be 10, 20, or 30%. Burning Hunger. Rank 0/3. Increases the critical strike chance of Immolate by 10, 20, or 30%. Lord of Flames. Rank 0/1. Once every 10 minutes, summon Infernal will summon 3 additional Infernals to serve you for 25 seconds. So there's a 10-minute cooldown, and it's going to give your Infernal basically more of a single target cooldown. I don't know if it's going to be more AoE or if it's going to be good for a single target, but 3 additional Infernals to serve you for 25 seconds. This thing's not only going to probably look cool as shit, but it'll probably do some pretty good, solid damage, and more than likely be an AoE Wreck Storm. Conflagration of Chaos. Conflagurate has a chance to guarantee your next Conflagurate critically strikes and to increase its damage by your critical strike chance. That's a pretty solid little gameplay choice changer right there. I mean, you'll end up timing your Conflagurates just slightly different and getting that additional crit. It's going to be a nice piece to end up playing. Residual Flames, rank 0/3, increases damage dealt by Immolate by 10, 20, or 30%. And that is going to be it for the artifact. As you can see, we still have the relics up here, but let's go ahead and move on and actually talk about the gameplay. The Destro lock. Unfortunately, I can't be as excited about this one as I normally would, because I do not enjoy the changes on this. I'm not much of a fan of the Destruction spec to begin with, because I feel like if I wanted to play this sit and spam spellcasting, I'd play a mage, honestly. But with the Warlock, let's talk about Destruction and where its positives and negatives do end up lying. Okay, so positive changes that have happened, they're a little more balanced instead of all about that burst, building embers and then bursting them off situation. They're a little more balanced out. The problem is they're all RNG related. Now you can run a solid general rotation and just try and push as much numbers as possible, but if you RNG is against you with the mastery, you're not going to be doing as much damage as you really should. Let's talk about a little bit of the rotation situation here as we try and discuss this a bit. Okay, generally what you're going to want to do in a single target situation is toss out Immolate to start off. Why? Because it's got a 15% chance to generate one soul shard, and that chance is doubled on critical strikes for each tick that it does. With these ticks, you're going to see some decent amount of gameplay changes. Then you're going to want to end up using your Conflagurate more than likely, and then which will give you, at least a guaranteed second shard to toss out Chaos Bolt, and then go into Incinerate and just kind of balance these gameplay situations. You're going to want to try and balance your abilities so you never cap them out on full, like with Conflagurate's charges. You want to make sure they're good. You want to keep Immolate up. And you want to just kind of balance your Chaos Bolt, especially if you took Eradication, in a timely manner. So going back and forth between Chaos Bolt, Incinerate, and Conflagurate is going to be a big option because of the way that you can tie these things to play together with reducing the cast time of Incinerate and Chaos Bolt if talented with Conflagurate, and Eradication from Chaos Bolt. There's a lot of different ways you can end up playing this spec. Unfortunately, you're at a loss of how much damage you're really going to end up doing due to the mastery. You've got a chance of improving your damage up to X amount, but on what spell? You don't know. You're just going to run this spec and let the game play for you. And I know I'm sounding a little negative, and I normally don't like sounding this way, but that's where this spec's at. It's 100% in the hands of RNGesus. I kind of had the same comments when I talked about the Outlaw Rogue. And again, it's all about RNG. Some people are going to like it, others not so much. Now, one thing I can say is the artifact ability, when timed right, can be a pretty substantial good piece. The Rift itself looks cool, and it's out there, and you can just basically fire and forget these things. But the gameplay, there's no real gameplay choice on it. The main time you're going to want to use this is when we've got the most out of your buffs, depending on how you spec. When you've got the most out of your buffs during a lust situation, which is, again, get the most out of your buffs, and you're going to want to fire these things off and let them do their damage. And then most likely you're going to want to build them up until they're almost 3 again, and kind of repeat the same deal to where you're getting these burst windows. Now, if you talented into Demon Fire, this thing is absolutely amazing with the channel Demon Fire on single target damage. It's very nice to play in there, and most of the time I found myself to where I would be making sure, once Immolate's up and once I've got everything taken care of, I would make sure I'd use it after Chaos Bolt and getting Eradication lined up, so it also got the additional damage on top of it from Eradication. There's a very neat gameplay and a lot of different choices. There's really no one way right now to end up playing this thing. You have multiple different choices to go, and it's really hard to end up discussing for that reason. Now in AoE, basically you're going to be looking at multi-dotting everything with Immolate, tossing out Rain of Fire if it's 4 or plus targets, and just going into a normal single target rotation, and then using Havoc on cooldown to try and do some modifiers. That's about it. There's not a whole hell of a lot that's different from live, except for the fact that this is strictly 100% in the hands of RNGesus. I really can't say too much more about this spec, guys, so let's take a look at the logs and see where the damage is actually coming from. The spec itself, mind you, I want to put a note in here. The spec itself is not bad. It's just not my preference because I like having a bit more control of where my damage is being placed. It does play out almost the same as what it does on live, to where you're keeping your Immolate up, you're using your Conflagurate, and you can basically set this up to where you've got a decent amount of structure and timing. It's rough. It really is. I did not enjoy the spec as much as I should have, and it's a sad situation. But the other two lock specs are 100% great. That's not going to be the situation for most people, and now we'll go ahead and move on to the logs. So here we are taking a look at the logs, and again, Chaos Bolt is going to be your main damage ability. With this spell, it always critically strikes, and I want you to take a look at this and know what I was talking about with the additional damage. You look at your minimum damage, the 100,256. All right, maximum damage, 172,918. One of those got the 72% or where my mastery's at, the 72% increase, and then one of them got no increase at all. Really a hard decision to end up playing with this, and I want to pull this up just so you can see. This one, you can see where the burst is on these, and this is all the same spell. Alright, all of these are the exact same spell that we are running here. Really kind of an odd situation with the way this is playing. You've got one that's in the, it's saying 30k, but again, you've got to look at the window areas. But this is jumping up and down absolutely ridiculously because of your mastery. There is no control here. Now we'll pull that off of there. And then Channel Demon Fire. Channel Demon Fire is the talent that I was telling you about. It does have a very good gameplay. I got 6 casts off with it, and it hit 80 times. Did a really solid amount of damage. It was above everything else. And again, it's going to be kind of the same situation to where you'll see the different casts, and this is going to be all the different. But, when you've got chances to where the damage does this or this, it's a hard fix. Incinerate, same difference. It's going to be your main filler, and it's up there. And then you've got your Imp, which is doing some pretty solid damage. You're looking at almost 10% damage just out of your Imp alone. Conflagurate, mainly used for charges, or building soul shards, I should say. Immolate, same difference. But single target, you can see 98.45% uptime. Immolate, pretty damn solid on the damage. Now, if you look, you can see the burst areas. These are going to be the recast windows that we've got. But generally, it's so all over the place as to where you're used to seeing a little more structure out of it. Let's look at Conflagurate's damage. Same difference. Real low, real high, real low, real high. The spike, because of the mastery, is absolutely insane with this. Now, is the damage bad? By no means, it is not. You've got a chance of actually being up there. It's chance. It's all chance. It's really insane on the way that they have pushed this spec towards chance. Chaos Barrage, this is going to be from your portal. This is Shadow Bolt from your Shadow Bolt portal, and then you've got Chaos Bolt from the Chaos Bolt portal. It gets one hit off. All these different portals, pretty decent. I mean, really, they're not too terribly bad. Again, Firebolt off of your... This is going to be the Grimoire Imp. Alright, still 6% for a 1.5 minute cooldown. It was getting ready to come back off cooldown anyway, so we would have been able to refire this, refire this one yet again. And then you've got Demon Bolt off of your Doomguard, and it's a decent cooldown, 3 minutes, but it's not as good as the Firebolt. This is why I'm saying I don't see why people would take it, because the damage is really low with the what is it, Demonic Servitude or Service. Having Doomguard out there, Doomguard itself as a cooldown is even weaker than what you would normally end up seeing out of just your regular pets. So I really don't see where this would end up doing any extra damage. As you see, average damage out of the Imp is going to be 15,652. Average damage out of the... It's really not a whole hell of a lot. You're looking at an additional, 200 damage per cast? Could add up, but not as well as actually taking this guy and doing some insane additional numbers. Again, this is just all my own personal theory crafting. And then you've got Immolate here. This is your general cast and not the dot. Doing some okay damage. And then Chaos Bolt from your portal. So here you have it. And again, this is Rockmore. This is the first boss in Neltharion's Lair. And I can't stress enough, I don't have a lot of casts at the beginning with Incinerate, but once things start petering out and slow down, just look at the spikes on this. This is absolutely insane where your damage lies. And I mean, some of them are crits, but most of the time, this is just going to be your Incinerate damage and it's just being adjusted by a huge amount. For what? Your mastery? It's so silly. And with this, guys, I'm sorry I was so negative in this review, but I did not like the things that they did to this spec. It was pretty decent where it was at, although it was a little on the overpowered side and it needed something to make its adjustment. So they made it to where it was like a game of chance with this spec also. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Again, I do apologize for being on the negative side, but with that, enjoy yourself and have a great day. Thanks for watching.